Hello there, welcome to Riot Act Reviews, part of the Riot Act podcast where I, Stephen Hill, and him, Remfry Deadman. Hello Remfry, how are you?
Hello Steve, I'm very well, thank you. How
are you? Are you actually?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, it's been as we will discuss on this week's weekly Riot Act podcast, it's not been a great week, and I think we're on the verge of war. So,
it's not been a great week, but I'm doing okay.
That's good.
I'm just trying to be as oblivious to world events and personal events as possible.
Yeah, fair. I mean, as long as you're all right, that's the main thing.
Yeah,
Isn't it? Anyway, look, this is part of the Riot Act podcast, which you can listen to us, as I just said, on every Friday. We come out talking about all the stuff that's been going on in the world of music, but occasionally we like to delve deep into a record of some note that is coming out very, very soon. And today we're going to be talking about Angel In Realtime by Gang of Youths, the third studio album by the Australian alternative rock band, the follow-up to the 2017 album Go Farther Into the Light. Before we get started, this is something we don't usually do, Remfry. We're going to big up somebody at a major record label. I have to be honest, I think because we're in the United Kingdom, if you're listening to this or if you're watching this on YouTube from outside of the United Kingdom, bear with us, because I'm aware that if you are from Australia or even if you're from America, Gang of Youths, quite a big deal. Quite a big deal.
I read somewhere, cannot recall the source, but one source, something like Spin or something like that, said they were like Kings of Leon levels in Australia.
Yeah. I mean, I know they've won a few ARIAs, which is the sort of the Australian equivalent of the Brits over here. So you think of the sort of people that win Brits over here. Well, Adele, as we were talking about recently.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they're as big as Adele, but they're pretty big in Australia.
Probably not as big as Adele, let's be fair.
Yeah,
they're fairly big in Australia and America, definitely. Yeah.
But even though they are headlining some pretty sizable venues on their upcoming UK headline tour in March, I was not really, I say not really, I wasn't familiar with them at all. I wasn't familiar with them as a band. And here we are. We have been sent their record. We get sent a lot of things. But Tom Dark at Warner, who's their label, sent this to me and said, I think you might be quite interested in this band. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, like when somebody texts you and says, my ears always prick up a bit when it's not just like, hey, I've got this new album, hope you like it, check it out. When someone says, listen, I know what you like, and I think you might be quite interested in this.
Tom made a point of saying this one is, for you guys, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And thank God he did as well.
I'm glad he did. And he said, he didn't send me the album straight away. He said, would you like me to send you the album of this? And he linked me to their Spotify page. And I listened to the first couple of singles, and I think they were singles from this album. I believe at the time, The Kingdom Is Within You or Angel of 8th Avenue were both out at that point. And I listened to them and I was like, I would definitely like to listen to more of that. And so Tom very kindly sent us over this record. And thanks, Tom. Thanks for doing that. Because I think this is a very good chance that even though, like I say, they are a sizable band in certain areas of the world, might slightly have passed you and I by were it not for somebody kind of waving this right in front of our face and going, you must listen to this.
Oh, a few weeks ago, I had never heard of this band. When Tom initially told us about it, I kept thinking they were called Gang of Four because it was so not in my mind at all. I was like, I must listen to that Gang of Four album in my head, and obviously,
I mean, by the way, you should listen to Gang of Four. Just as an aside. Not
different.
That. Yeah.
And no, I hadn't heard of this band at all. And I'm like a few weeks later, with the amount that I've listened to this album, with the amount of research I've done on this band, all the interviews I've been given, finding out their fascinating story, being completely wowed by how their front person manages to communicate those elements of their story, which really are amazing through song. Just completely sucking myself into the world of Gang of Youths. It seems crazy to me now, at this point where we're recording, that I knew precisely fuck all about this band a month ago, because I've delved, and I know you have as well, I've delved so deeply into this band to try and discover more about them and read as much about them as possible. And that whole fandom thing has really kicked in for me, which I should say is incredibly rare for people like you and me, because we are having to move on to the next thing all the time, kind of thing, you know? So yeah, it's an extraordinary thing when that happens, I would say. And it probably only happens a couple of times a year.
This part of the podcast is basically like, you know, when you see athletes and they're going ready, set, they're at the sort of starting line.
Yes.
And they're set. That's sort of where we are on this part. Like we're
setting ourselves up to be really complimentary for the next.
Yeah, I mean, look,
minutes, yeah.
let's put it this way. We haven't heard of this band before. You might have not heard of this band before. By the end of the year, whether or not we had told you, I'm pretty sure you would have heard of them.
Agreed.
If you have heard of them and you are a fan of them, be prepared to share them with a lot of people. I would predict. They have just recently opened for Sam Fender in arenas in the UK. Last year they did the Colbert Show in the US as well. So, you know, like I say, they are doing all right for themselves. But we should talk about this record and this record in particular, rather than just going, hey, how did we miss this thing that was happening? So this album essentially is about, as you said, it's a very personal diary into the mind of frontman David Laupepe. That's what I think that's how you say it.
Yes, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. But I think that's a brave attempt and well done.
Okay. So it is dealing with the death of his father, someone who he described as the most important man in my life, in a feature that I read with him from the Telegraph. And this album,
your friend of mine, Nick Ruskell.
Yeah, and it's a really, really good, feature as well. So, yeah, very, very interesting and revealing. And the revelations about what he found out about his father after this event, and this record essentially deals with that. It is about somebody's life. It is about somebody's impressions of somebody else's life, and then I guess their life after dealing with the revelations of a life that they thought they knew. I'm making it sound quite complicated, aren't I? But I guess these sort of feelings are quite complicated. I mean, basically, David LaPepe is Polynesian heritage, and he says in the press notes, of this record, I wanted to reflect on how I became dependent on grief for solace and inspiration. The cycle from numbness to acceptance to yearning plays a role in my approach to grieving my dad's death. As a result, most of the time, I feel a bit futile as a person. Now, that might sound like a catchy little thing for somebody to say about their records in the build-up to the release of it, but genuinely, I think he's fucking nailed exactly what this record sounds like in that like 30, 40 words.
Yeah, and it's actually quite a complex thing that he's trying to nail as well. It's not a very black and white, it's not a simple feeling that he's trying to nail. It's quite extraordinary, the way some of these songs make me feel and make me think about my own life and how I feel like I can relate to them, even though I'm a completely different person to David Laupepe. Very, very different. You know,
should definitely check. We should definitely.
Yeah, we really should have checked that.
Fact check that.
Massive apologies, because it's also going to be a name that a lot of people are going to know like quite soon, I think. But yeah, it's extraordinary the way this album makes me feel and the way that it has related to my own life.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, from what I can ascertain, just very, very briefly, I don't think we need to get too much into the actual, I was going to say gossip of the story. Then I'm sort of searching for a better word than that, but let's go with it for a minute. But
I think it's on the record. If you want to hear it, it's on the record, and we both fully recommend that you listen to the record. So
Yeah. I mean, basically, his father passed away. He thought his father was 70. His father actually was 80. And he found out in the aftermath of his passing that he had a whole other family, a secret family that, you know, that David had never been aware of before. And basically, this record deals with kind of eulogizing and celebrating everything he knew about his father, but then also trying to, I guess, reconcile and reevaluate all the things that he found out about him later, and how those two things kind of butt heads together, and how that affects him as a person. And the result of this, and also when you look at the influences, I think of Gang of Youth, which again, like I say, you know, there's Polynesian heritage. They're from Australia, which is, you know, Australia is a country with a great musical heritage, but it doesn't have a single defining characteristic in the same way as Manchester or Seattle or New York, or do you know what I mean? It doesn't have that same thing. So I think bands from these sort of places, and bands with sort of different heritage and stuff. I mean, I recently spoke to a band who have a kind of Latin American heritage, but don't actually have that in their music, but they're like, it's kind of in our blood anyway, even if we don't, whether or not we choose to have it sort of clear in our music, it still sort of it's still kind of it just is there. So I think that thing just is there. And then when you think of the influences that there are, that you can listen, that you can clearly hear on this record, which for me very much feel like quite I guess mid-noughties electronic music, and British indie, like kind of the glory years of British indie, and Americana. So Pulp to The National, Foals to Arcade Fire, The Verve to The War on Drugs, Springsteen, the British Invasion, Nick Cave a little bit as well, I think, is in there, what with, you know, where they're from as well. I think when you kind of amalgamate those things, that would be an interesting album. I think when you whack in the extra added elements of that kind of electronic stuff that they do, and also the just imbuing of their own heritage into a style which is, you know, is not somewhere they're rigidly from. So there's no kind of Polynesian Britpop bands as far as I'm aware. You get a very different sounding take on that. And I think even before we get into the thematics of the record, musically this is just so fucking ambitious, and it doesn't not sound like something you've never heard before, but at the same time it does sound like something you've never heard before, because it's just got this something else about it that is so different from the things that it's influenced by. If you're from fucking Boston and you decide to do a Menzingers band, you're probably going to sound a bit like the Menzingers, right?
Yeah.
But maybe with a bit of the Dropkick Murphys thrown in or whatever. But this doesn't have that at all. It's just got that something else to it, which sets it apart from pretty much all those bands I've mentioned before.
Yeah. It took me a very long time to get a grip on what this album was. Not because I think the music is particularly complex, because I don't think I think a lot of it is actually relatively simple. I think it's very layered, and I think there's a lot going on, but I don't think the individual parts are particularly complex. But in terms of the breadth and the broadness of the album, certainly musically, and I'd say lyrically as well, it took me a long time to kind of get a grip on it, because it's so vast. It's so vast. There's so much going on. And the first 3 or 4 listens, I think, to this record, I knew it was good, but I also just didn't understand quite. I was like, what is this? I'm not sure what it is. You've just named a lot of bands and a lot of acts, all of which I absolutely see in this band. But it also doesn't give a particularly clear indication or idea of what they sound like, because everything that you've named is so broad. I tried to do an elevator pitch to a friend yesterday to try and sum it up, and I was basically like, The National with a bit of Radiohead and a bit of the war on drugs, basically. And I was like, that's about the closest I'm going to be able to get to summing up this record succinctly.
Yeah, but that's not even... I mean, for me, if someone hears that and they go, well, that sounds good, they're going to be confronted with so many other things which have nothing to do with any of those three bands.
Yes.
And I think that actually comes from, you know, the kind of those backing vocal chants, those kind of... I mean, I don't even know how to accurately describe it without being accused of, you know, kind of being culturally insensitive. I don't know what those sounds are. I don't know how to describe them, but they feel very evocative of something else. Do you know what I mean? Of something else. And I'm not quite sure what that something actually is. So let's go into the actual album itself, kind of track by track. The opening song, You and Everything, does set a stall out rather well, I think. I mean, it's just fucking gorgeous. And that hook of I Will Hear You and Everything is just so fucking haunting. And the way that it builds with these strings, just from that kind of small mandolin part, is incredible. And again, lyrically, you know, it immediately asks these kind of really specific but really relatable questions about the nature of parenthood and how one might feel. Like, I don't have kids, you don't have kids, but you kind of go, like, if I found out that I was about to be a father or I was about to have children, surely you would go, oh shit, I don't know what I'm going to do. And there's that senses all over that song. And I think immediately you just go, wow, here we go. This is happening. This like straight away. You kind of, as soon as I put it on, I got the feeling. I was like, I mean, if it carries on like this is going to be really great. This record, right?
Yeah, you're not wrong. It doesn't carry on like this, and yet it's even better than you could have imagined it. Because, you know, slight spoiler alert. I think this album starts fantastically and more or less just gets better.
The second half of it is,
but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But this You and Everything is an extraordinary way to start. That 1 minute intro or 1 minute and a bit intro, which is essentially the kitchen sink and everyone else's kitchen sink. Let's just throw everything in and give you a kind of 1 minute. This is roughly everything you're going to hear on the record, roughly. But so much is being thrown at you, there's no possible way you could make sense of it, not on the first couple of listens. It's weird now because when that intro comes in now, my body actually has a response, an automatic response, which I swear it just floods me with what's the chemical, serotonin, or, you know, it just makes me very, very happy suddenly, because I know when that intro comes in that means the next 67 minutes of my life is going to be this incredible musical journey that I'm about to go on, and I think that's extraordinary. But the song itself, You and Everything, is beautiful. It's a lovely song about his wife, about how he sees her in everything, and that's just the sentiment of it. It's absolutely lovely. I mean, this album is chock full of beautiful sentiments towards all manner of people in his life. But yeah, You and Everything is a beautiful way to start this record.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you to Tom for sending us the lyrics, because this is a record where, you know, like the lyrics on the page as well are where you go. Like, I think you can listen to lyrics sometimes and they sound amazing within the context of great music, and then you can read them and you go, oh yeah, you know, like, I maybe actually read off the page on their own, they maybe lose something a little bit away from them, and that's fine. I think that's fine. But
I would say most lyrics are like that, personally. Yeah. Like there's very few where they work with the music but also just off the page. But yeah,
I would say this is one of the records that is the sort of the exception to the rule, isn't it?
Definitely.
I mean, the second song, In the Wake of Your Leave, the opening verse on that, so as you canyoneered from our world upwards, and the angels took their place. I was the loser at your funeral, no emotion conveyed. It was drawn out in vain, and the idiot I am just figured in the wake of your leave that I'd never hear from you again. And I just think that's just fucking an amazing piece of lyric writing. It's not showy. It's not like, I mean, again, I think I said before, I had a kind of argument with someone on Twitter who said, "Oh, Matt Healy from the 1975 is such a genius because I listened to his lyrics and it was all just like jumbled, big bloody, like some people can write big jumbly word stuff. We've spoken about Cedric Bixler before and how that shit that he writes, which is all just like, photo box my grandmother's ashen zebra xenomorph and you just go, I don't know what you're talking about, but
just proving how difficult it is.
Yeah, I know, I am, yeah. But yeah, because it is difficult. It is difficult, and I think and Cedric Bixler is somebody who can do that. You'd probably see it written down and go, I don't know what any of this means. Yeah. But then when you hear him deliver it, you kind of get what he's saying through the intention of what he's saying. Definitely. Whereas this is not that. This is simple and relatable, but I mean, you said something brilliant yesterday, and I'll let you say it about how specific yet relatable this record is. So okay. I mean, I've kind of ruined it there, but go on. In your words, Remfry.
I was referring specifically to one song, so I might save it for later.
Okay.
Well,
I think it's relevant to the entire record, to be perfectly honest. But like,
fuck it, I'll do it now. I was saying how a lot of the lyrics on this record are clearly about experiences that are very, very personal to David Loapepe. Apologies once again.
Let's hope that's vaguely right. Yeah, hopefully.
It's vaguely right. And yet, he manages to have his cake and eat it as well, because he somehow manages to get to the crux of the emotion of those experiences, and that emotion is what makes it universal. So there is a line of thought within songwriting that if you want to appeal to lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people, you write lyrics which aren't detailed, and you write lyrics which aren't specific.
Linkin Park have famously, Chester Bennington said, it's not really about anything.
Yeah. We're going to do a classic album on Muse soon, and I really like Muse a lot, but Matt Bellamy is very well versed in that. They won't control us. They won't, obey us. Blah blah blah. Whatever. I mean, that could be the government, or it could be your parents.
Or me.
Or it could be Stephen Hill.
It is, to be fair.
For example, the lyrics on Angel in Realtime are really specific. And, the thinking goes, if they're really, really specific, the more specific and the more detailed they are, the less people are going to be able to relate to them. And I've always thought that line of thinking is bullshit. And Angel in Realtime proves me correct.
Yeah. I think so, yeah. I mean, listen, we've been talking for a little while already. We've essentially, we could go through track by track, but actually, I've written notes of track by track.
Take a long time.
I don't think we should do a track by track, actually, because there's a couple of reasons I think that. One is we'll be here a really, really long time. And two, because I think there's shit on this album that you should probably discover for yourself. Because I'm going to say right now, you've got go and like. Spoiler alert, you need to go, and it's not a spoiler really, is it? Like, you need to go and listen to this record. You need to do that. And so let's leave a few little surprises for people.
I'd actually recommend that you pause this right now, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening through the podcast, and just listen to the record and then come back to us, and we'll talk about some of the stuff that you've just heard. Like whoever you are, whatever you're into, that would be my recommendation.
Unless you're listening to it before it came out, of course, because this is probably going to go out just before it comes out.
Naughty.
Yeah. Don't pirate it. Listen to it properly. So I'm going to say sort of the first half of the record is is big, isn't it? Here's the other thing about this band. They've just been doing arenas with Sam Fender. I can't imagine how great these songs sound in the arena. I can't imagine how great they're going to sound in stadiums. I say gonna sound in stadiums because, I've written down shit like Coldplay and the Killers here. And I know people will be like, hold on, Coldplay and the Killers, oh no, But Those band. What I mean by that is, you've already mentioned Kings of Leon. What I mean by that is a band who are able to write a record with this much depth, this much ingenuity, this much originality, this much heart, and this much personality, and yet are still able to write a song like The Kingdom Is In You, which has got this chorus that I just sounds like it should be being played at the opening to the Olympic Games. Like, it is massive. There are so many moments. Like, don't be fooled into thinking that this is some sort of weird little insular bedroom project. This is massive. Absolutely massive. At points on this record, when it wants to go stadium filling, it sounds absolutely gargantuan, this record. And I would say the first half of the record in particular, which I think is the term, in the loosest terminology possible, the weakest half of the record, the first half.
I would agree with that. Weakest does seem very cruel indeed, considering the quality of it, but yes.
Considering that, that is the weakest half of the record, it still feels like those are the songs that people will be going, like, jumping up and down and hugging their best friend to in, massive fields in festivals around the world, because there is some huge shit in there.
Yeah, I think a lot of the anthems are on the first half of the record. I'm speaking relatively broadly, because there are definitely some anthems on the second half as well, but I think a lot of the more overtly, not even overtly, but a lot of the material which can be interpreted as joyous, even if it's just in a musical sense rather than a lyrical sense, is in the first half, I would say. The Kingdom Is Within You, that song that you mentioned, is absolutely astonishing. That song is absolutely amazing. I got this from The Enemy. It's a tribute to the lives and legacy of thousands and thousands of Pacifican migrants who were trying to make their way in the world, but were fucked over, exploited, and treated very badly by their conquering masters, as Loa Pepe explains. Pacifica people are individually separate. We have our own cultures, our own traditions, our own languages, but we are unified in identity. And, I don't want to spoil too many of the lyrics on this record, and I don't want to read them in my shitty, plummy voice. I think you should, listen to the album. But to give an example of how that is presented, the first verse and chorus go, "When the foreman came, he helped me understand that my destiny was mortar in the Almighty's hand. Then they shipped my ass and they worked me place to place, then delivered me in the combines as a ward of the state. Come to find me, I'm here today, but don't belong. I'm working till the debt is gone. The upside of it, but in a most familiar way, I'm begging you to understand. I try to be a decent man. The upside of it. And it's this...
And that bit, the upside of it is so fucking... It's such a massive earworm.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And the song itself, it's so joyous. It's so joyous, but it's singing about something awful. It's singing about a group of people in really awful slave-like conditions. And when you hear words like "I'm working till the debt is gone," in that kind of environment, and yet and it's writing from that perspective as well, but it's doing so in a way which is glass half full rather than glass half empty. There's something so moving about that. I think it kind of makes you go, well, what, those circumstances are worse than any circumstances that I have ever been in and ever will be in. And yet they can find some joy and they can find some happiness. It will be something that you will see people on the pyramid stage at Glastonbury singing along to and hugging their friends. Like that's the unbelievable
duality of this record,
Yeah,
isn't it? I mean, again, Returner was a song that I wanted to. I mean, that how I'm not in it for the money.
Yeah,
that I'm only in it for the money. I'm only in it for the money. That hook is massive. But again, when you read through the whole lyric sheet for that song, it's talking about some really complicated, difficult things. It's fucking wicked. But I would say, the first half of the album is, I guess, kind of bigger and more instantaneous, no less deep, no less important, no less great. But really, I think, Remfry, if you don't mind, we'll get to the song.
Okay.
We'll get to the song on the record, I think, which is Brothers. Which is, without any question, I'm just going to say it, actually, this is the best song of the year so far. This isn't one of the best songs of the year so far. This is the best song I have heard so far this year, released or unreleased, in any genre of music. This is piano and raw emotion, and again, the shit that this song deals with, and the way that it deals with those kind of complicated emotions and the nuance of like difficult relationships within your family and stuff, and I think is amazing. And it would be amazing, again, just kind of written down on paper, but added to a song which is just stupendously fragile and beautiful and perfect. I cannot imagine, like, if you hear a better song than this in 2022, you've heard the best song of the year. This is the bar for all music that I've heard so far this year. This is a possibly unreachable bar, this song.
Yes. This is the song I was talking about when I was talking about, you said it quite nicely there, the duality of this record, but also the duality of that lyrical idea that you can't be detailed, and yet, reach lots of people. I think this song shows that that's total nonsense. It tells an incredible story. I mean, it is the story of, about Pepe's father. It is that whole thing that we sort of touched on already. Again, I think that people should discover it for themselves. But again, just to give an idea of the lyrical kind of tone of the music, like I'll just do like the first couple of verses. Our father hid a lot of painful memories, a bunch of shit he never shared. But when he died, I went out looking for them, for all the things he never said. Thought he was born in 1948, but was born a whole decade before. Thought he was brought up in New Zealand, but he was born and brought up in Samoa. We thought that he was only half Samoan, that his mother was a German Jew, but I went and found his birth certificate and he lied about that too. And so that's basically 3 verses of like a 20-verse song or something like that. And already you're like, fuck, this is really captivating. This is really, really interesting. And you're brought into the story, and the way that it unfolds and the way that it kind of broadens it out to everyone. Anyone who has grieved, certainly. And those feelings of kind of maybe regret that you're not able to say things to those people who are no longer here. Maybe you didn't get an opportunity to say something that you'd always wanted to say to them, or that feeling that you will just never ever be able to reconcile some unreconciled things with someone now that they're no longer here. I think I got that so strong. I get that so strongly listening to this song, and it really has a huge emotional effect on me. We were talking on the phone last night, and I had listened to it 5 minutes previous to our conversation, and I was still wiping tears away when my phone started ringing. Like, it's an extraordinary song.
If you are someone who's been listening to our podcast for however long, and you listen to our albums of the year, you know how I felt about that Brandi Carlile record. That was my number 3, and how kind of moved by all of that I was. And again, Brandi Carlile writing about very, very specific things to her life that seemed to resonate so perfectly with me, that I recognise so much. And, you know, she doesn't care about, she's not trying to appeal to my perspective. But I mean, you know, the second to last verse about him meeting his brother, and again, I thought about reading it out a minute ago, but then I was like, well, I think I'm going to struggle to read it out. But certainly, like, him meeting this brother that he never knew, and talking about him with such kind of warmth, and then how he had never met his father, and then getting to the point, I mean, the last line, but if he forgives him, then I should too. It's so good. It's so good, and it's so fucking, you know, it paints David LaPepe in a beautiful light as a human being, as much as a songwriter, I think. And
I thought there were quite a lot of, I mean, obviously this is me doing my Pearl Jam worship thing, but there were quite a lot of parallels with Eddie Vedder, not in the style or anything like that, but in, like, I can tell through the writing of this individual that you are a good human
good
being.
man.
I
mean, if you are like, I don't have time for 67 minutes of this, I'm busy.
You do.
I mean, you do.
You
like,
do.
One, you do. 2, if you just want to listen to one song, I would listen to Brothers. I think you're mad to only listen to one song, but I would expect, were you to listen to this song, you would probably listen to the rest of the album, because I can't imagine not going, wow, this is fucking amazing.
I agree. The only caveat I'm going to put on that is I don't think Brothers is representative of the album as a whole musically, because it is enormously stripped back. And actually, that was something I was going to say. Up to that point, I think Brothers is track 9. Yeah, track 9. Yeah. Up to that point, it's been quite a busy record in terms of the instrumentation and what's going on. And there's quite a few songs. There's a song called Unison, which starts in one way and then ends with this amazing, almost like happy hardcore drum and bass freak out, which is incredible.
There's lots of drum and bass. There's loads of kind of kraut rocky drum and bassy bits in there. I mean, I didn't even get to, you know, I think in Unison there's a bit of talk in the middle of that, where the kind of horns, they've got those kind of you know, minimalist brass being used in sort of sparing ways, and also drum and bass parts, kraut rock parts. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we haven't even really touched on from that first half. But yeah, like you say, Brothers does strip it back. So yeah, you're right. I don't think Brothers is representative of the entire record as a whole, but I do think that if you are I mean, God, don't actually, fuck it. Don't just listen to one song. What am I even giving you that? I'm not giving you the option to do that. I mean, again, Forbearance has got quite a bit of, it's got a kind of drum and bass rhythm to it as well, and that's essentially a ballad as well. I mean, that's kind of ballady, and then when it comes back towards the end, again, like, absolutely fucking beautiful. This is, I think, where we get to some really, really amazing parts of the record. Like, Brothers.
These final 5 tracks are like all 10 out of 10, astonishing as far as I'm concerned.
Really, really astonishing. I think the man himself has got this incredible driving beat, and again, you could, on the surface, that's probably, from the second half of the record, the most instantaneous, I guess, quote unquote, mainstream pop sounding one on the surface. But it's the lyrical depth and the storytelling. Storytelling, I mean, you said yesterday that you don't think he's a million miles off Springsteen at his best, and I think that is something which everybody who makes this type of music, or a similar type of music, an adjacent type of music to Springsteen, tries to go for, and not many people get within touching distance.
I've been listening to quite a lot of Springsteen recently for whatever reason, and yeah, Springsteen came up multiple times whilst listening to this record, and I do think the quality, yeah, I think it matches Springsteen in the storytelling. Yeah, Springsteen levels.
It absolutely does. I think there's Hand of God I've put as like Jeff Buckley from a UK working class perspective. Now I know that they're not a UK band, but there's a line, the Copite coach at Goodison, so a Liverpool supporter coaching at Everton Football Club. I was like, that's so, like, for those of people who know, that's such a great little, funny little addition. Like, it's such a sort of brilliantly knowing little. I mean, it's obviously something that's real. Do you know what I mean? It's obviously something that which has come from real life, and I have no reason to doubt the kind of the validity of that. But it's one of those things that you go, yeah, you wouldn't invent that, or you wouldn't make that. But it's amazing. I don't know. I just thought that made it. It gave it that real kind of kitchen sink, sort of gritty reality to it.
Well, that reality, yeah. It is worth saying that they are based in the UK. They actually moved to the UK about 5 years ago to escape, their celebrity fame back in Australia, and because the UK have been, in this instance, quite slow to pick up on them. They moved here, but we should also probably point out that in 3 weeks' time they are due to play Brixton Academy, which is a 5,000 cap venue. So it's not like they're a tiny band over here, but yeah. So.
And then Goal of the Century closes the record, and it is over 7 minutes long. It's 7 minutes 4 seconds. It's the longest song on the record. It is, for me, the euphoric, perfect, spine-tingling, air-punching, light breaking through the storm at the end of this record that I prayed that it would be. That very last verse with just the piano and his voice may be one of the most perfect ways to end the record ever. That last verse of just him, it feels like a stream of consciousness. Do you know what I mean? It feels like somebody trying to sort of in real time trying to go, how do I feel about all of this? Do you know what I mean? It's really, again, I feel like I want to read a little bit of it out, but not too much. So, like, the rabbits are chasing, Ricardo's racing, and I'm making a living, and God is forgiving. It's 6 a.m, and England is storming. My wife is asleep, and we're thinking of children. I wish you could meet them. Oh, that's really, that's such a, and that's how the album ends.
Yeah,
it's great, man. It's fucking great, this record. It's really great.
I think I think those last two songs, just to pick up here, I think those last two songs are a really incredible double bill, so to speak. I think they are linked by that sort of hallelujah refrain as well, and I really love that, the fact that it sort of all comes back together. And it really is an extraordinary. I was saying to you, like, before we started recording here, that like a lot of the attention is being given to Brothers by a lot of reviews and stuff, and as it should be. Brothers is an extraordinary song, but truthfully, there is so much quality, amazing things going on this record. I've listened to it now, I reckon 7-8 times. I still don't feel like truthfully, there's so much going on this album that I don't feel like I would be prepared to do the best review possible on this record unless I listened to it 20 times. And even then, I feel like I'd still be scratching the surface in terms of like an album that you'll be able to come back to again and again and again, which is going to reveal more things to you every time you listen to it. I mean, I it's not like every time I go back to it, I hear one new thing in one song. At this point in time, every time I go back to it, I hear like 30 new things which blow my mind. Like every time, which I just hadn't even twigged before. And then I hear this thing, I'm like, oh, that's fucking amazing. And then I can't even think of the song without that part. Can't
unhear it, can you? Yeah.
You can't unhear it, absolutely. It is properly extraordinary, the sort of... oh god, I mean, just to wank it up journey that I've had with this record. It's like the first time I listened to it, I knew it was very good. I was like, well, this is clearly a very good record. But even then, I didn't quite fully appreciate how phenomenal it is. And I really say that because I think for some people, I think it does have an instantaneous quality to it. You can get enjoyment from this album from your first listen. Like I said before, it's not strictly a complex record musically. There are bits where it's very full, but you know, the individual parts aren't all that complex. But the way that it draws you in and the way that it kind of has these surprises which you don't kind of encounter until your 9th, 12th, 18th listen, it's an extraordinary album from that point of view. It's amazing.
For real. I mean, look, balls on the chopping block time, right?
Yeah.
We have only reviewed every time as you go through the year. When you do this, you get to the point where you start going, no matter what time of year it is, you start going, when we get to the end of the year, album of the year, what's that going to look like? What's that going to be? Where's that going to sit, right? And it usually takes the year a little while to get going. I think by this time last year, I don't think I hadn't heard any of my top 5 albums at that point. No, Stephen Wilson came out quite early. So Stephen Wilson, I was like, Stephen. But even Stephen Wilson, which was my number 4, and I absolutely fucking love that record. I think it's fucking incredible. Even that, I was like, I think, this is my favourite thus far, and I think it's fucking great. Will it be number 1? I think I look at it and go, that's toppable. For me so far this year, in terms of what we've actually reviewed, I've heard a few other things. Not much, I would say, that comes close to this, but for the only thing that we've reviewed so far this year that I thought to myself, well, this has got to be in with a shout of being very, very high come the end of the year, is Black Country New Road. For me, that is the only thing where I'd go, that is a potential album of the year contender. I think Zealand is also fucking great. I really like the Rolo Tomasi album as well. I think that's amazing. Venom Prison for metal, as a genre on its own, not kind of I think is very strong. Cotalunas, obviously, they're always great. I really love the Elvis Costello record. I really like the Frank Turner record. Yeah. But I would say all of those records, with the exception of Black Country New Road, I wouldn't ever have looked at any of them and gone, this is album of the year potential. I think even a few days ago, I've written in my notes, like, this is up there with Black Country New Road. I think having had a few days with it, I think it's, for me, gonna be ahead of Black Country New Road. And I think Black Country New Road is fucking great. I mean, that album will definitely grow on me, as we discussed in our review. But this is, without any question at all, I think, the hot favourite now for album of the year. It's going to take something really, really amazing from somebody to outstrip this. This is, I mean, it's funny, we've moaned on Broken Records recently quite a lot about the length of records. We did fucking Phil Collins, which was only 56 minutes long, but it felt like it was about 2 months, didn't it? Billy Idol's Cyberpunk was about the same length of this record, and it felt like it went on and on and on and on and on.
God, isn't that insane that Cyberpunk this by Billy Idol is the same length?
The same length, yeah. This is 67 minutes long, but it just flies by.
It really does.
It absolutely flies by. There's so much going on here. It's hard to know where to even point this in the direction of in terms of genre. I don't know what this music is, but yet at the same time it feels so instant and massive and like, do you know what I mean? It's so clearly something that most people would like. I can't understand how anyone wouldn't like this. I mean, one of the things you said to me yesterday is, even if you didn't like it, you'd have to admit that it's at least a 7 out of 10, just because of how ambitious and how personal and how brave a record it was. And I'd be inclined to agree with that. Although I would say, if you didn't like it, you just must really hate music, because I cannot for the life of me imagine why you wouldn't like this, unless you just like minimalist avant-garde electronic music, or pure kind of high energy pop bangers or death metal, if that's all you listen to, one of those genres, yeah, I get it. This probably isn't going to be for you. But if you just like music in general, I cannot even fathom where you would start to find a chink in the armor of this record. This is a fucking 10 out of 10 record. Like, this to me feels like there's two things are going to happen here. This is my prediction. Two things are going to happen here. One, this will get 10s out of 10s and 5 out of 5 stars across the board.
I agree.
Across the board.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. Two, they will be like, we're going to go and see him at Brixton, fingers crossed, Tom. Please, Tom.
Oh, he'll love that.
Yeah. Please, Tom. Or we'll get everyone to tweet you and bully you into if you don't get us on the guest list. And two, that Brixton show in a few years' time will feel like a very intimate show that we saw them at.
I'm confident that that's the case. Yeah, I'm very confident that that's the case. And it's always
we're not exactly new. We're not exactly new to the party, but I feel like we're just getting in there before it becomes what I think it has a very good chance of becoming.
I completely agree. I think this record is absolutely astonishing, and I can't imagine. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think if you like music, there's no fucking reason why you shouldn't be into this at all. And I mean, we said on the phone yesterday, like, this band are going to be playing the O2, like, what, within 5 years? And like, making predictions...
Mate, even less than that.
Making predictions like these ones are a fool's errand, and we know that even better than most people as journalists, you know, because we probably have made these predictions in the past and then been completely wrong. But I'm that confident. I'm that confident. Gang of Youths are going to be fucking massive, you know?
I mean, I said last year I would get Corey Taylor's face tattooed on my cheek if Black Country New Road didn't get nominated for a Mercury Prize. Because I was like, that is so clear. Yeah. If this band aren't doing arenas by, I mean, I was going to say 3 years, to be honest, that they'll do an arena show. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the start of next year that they were playing at Ali Pally or Wembley.
You're right. Yeah. I was going to say by the end of this album cycle, they'll be doing arenas, but an Ali Pally show doesn't seem beyond the realms of possibility.
I mean, if they're not, if 3 years from now they haven't headlined Wembley or Alexandra Palace, let alone the O2, which I think will happen, but if they haven't done Wembley or Ali Pally by the end of this album, then I will get Matt Bellamy lyrics tattooed in a speech bubble coming out of my mouth. I'm that confident.
I've never wanted to do such a big turnaround on a band and wish them ill.
There's nothing you can do, mate. This is an unstoppable train that is coming. There you go. I think we've basically... Well, we haven't really summed it up.
Well, look, we could go on for another, like, two hours easily, but, you know... We've got to stop at some point. But basically, this album's fucking incredible and you should check it out.
Yeah, for real. All right, it's Angel in Real Time by Gang of Youths. Thank you very much for listening to us talk about this record. We will see you on Riot Act very, very soon. And you need to go and listen to this record. It's fucking brilliant. We will speak to you when we do another one of these. Don't know when it'll be. Don't know what it'll be. But it probably won't be as good as this. Not gonna lie. Let's hope it is.
You say that. I mean, I think it's either going to be the Vane record or the Koji Radical record, and
could both be very good.
They could both be very good. So
they could. All right. Anyway, speak to you later, guys. Thanks for listening. Bye now.